shall overcome. We shall overcome.
At the heart of 20th century American history is what distinguished historian Jacqueline Dowd Hall called a long civil rights movement. It took root in the late 1930s, accelerated during World War II, stretched well beyond the decade that most Americans recognize as the Civil Rights era, and inspired a movement of movements that defies any narrative of collapse. The long civil rights movement in North Carolina and the hostility and obstruction that accompanied it are well documented in the libraries of Duke University, NC Central University, NC State, and UNC Chapel Hill. In 2011, the 4 university libraries comprising the Triangle Research Library Network began a 3-year project to scan 400,000 pages of 20th century archival materials and to digitize 500 sound recordings relevant to the movement. The documents and sound recordings echo voices of those who sought progressive and sometimes radical social change, and those who resisted through violence and vitriol.
All over our country, the months ahead are predicted to be filled with uncertainty, strife, and violence. Despite such prophecy, how fortunate we are to live in this extraordinary time of change. Elna Spaulding, April 1971.
Frank Porter Graham, president of the University of North Carolina through the 1930s and 40s, noted the contradictions between the realities of life for most Southerners and the nation's democratic ideals and abundant resources.
Democracy had provided equality of suffrage, but not equality of opportunity. The old political liberties and social drift of a more static society are tragically insufficient to meet the vast economic changes, financial crises, and the deep human needs of our dynamic modern society. Frank Porter Graham, 1939.
Opponents of social change justified segregation and discrimination with dire predictions of social collapse and increased criminality. Other opponents tried what they considered rational arguments and biological reasoning. American college students played a pivotal role in the events of the 1960s. In North Carolina, they launched the Greensboro sit-ins, voter registration drives, and campus protests, such as the Allen Building takeover at Duke University.
There is no more burning issue facing the American public than that of civil rights. Young people are on the march. They will not be deterred by arrests, jail sentences, fire hoses, police dogs, nor death itself, for they feel that freedom and first-class citizenship are in the air, and that they must be permitted to breathe this air. Asa Spaulding, September 1963.
Praised by civic leaders like Spaulding, student protesters were simultaneously denounced by others and deemed agitators, extremists, and radicals who were threatening society. The work of civil rights activists persisted through the 1970s and 1980s and continued to meet with resistance, violence, and a re-energized national conservatism. Civil rights activism expanded to include migrant farmers, workers, prisoners, gays and lesbians, and women. More than 4 decades after the 1947 Journey of Reconciliation, historian Helen Edmonds spoke to the graduating class of North Carolina Central University.
My young friends, it is a changed world in which you will make your way, and this world bequeathed to you is yours to keep and improve. There must be no turning back to where things are old and habits familiar. You must step boldly into the new day and master new patterns of thinking and acting. Helen Edmonds, May 1991.
The long civil rights movement remade the South and the nation. Times have changed, but the struggle continues today.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Well, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. We're gonna pray for freedom. We're gonna